So welcome everybody. I'm Maklit Chernat, and I am data scientist working for the Alliance of Seattle Biodiversity. So here we are. I'm with my colleagues, two colleagues together, and we are going to present you data-driven agro-advisories for Africa, the AKILIMO and AgWise story. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Some things are a bit, yeah, that is better. So if I give you the AgWise overview, AgWise is a data analytics framework to develop tailored agronomic recommendations, and it is a joint effort across several CG centers, SEAT, SEA Biodiversity, IIT, SEEP, IRI, CIMIT. About 10 CG centers are working together. We are about 23 people building this analytical framework. So it is really enriched with diverse expertise and experiences in the team. It is a co-development process because our scaling partners and demand partners, they do have a very good relationship with us, and they engage to the depths in all what we do. At the end of the day, the idea is also to share data analytics result conclusion openly with our partners. It is built out of what was there before us. For instance, AKILIMO from IIT, NextGen, and EDACAP from the Alliance, the Gaia effort. The different CG centers are bringing what they have as a tool, as a data analytics platform, and we are just harmonizing and taking the best out of all this previous effort. The target crops that we are working at this point is maize, rice, wheat, potato, soybean, and cassava. Maybe one thing I need to mention here is it is within the Excellence in Agronomy initiative of CGIAR that we are implementing this. We are active in Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia, providing recommendation across these crops. Our analytical framework has a modular design, therefore we can advance independently the different modules, and it is also easy to maintain it, and it just gives us the flexibility there. We have a platform or a framework that we call it CAROP to be able to standardize legacy data on field measurement, survey data that is openly available there. But we are also pulling data from our partners like IFDC, One Acre Fund, the Coalition Filling from Ethiopia. If you would like to check what kind of data that we have standardized across different crops, you could see the CAROP, the caropdata.org dashboard. So what are the key elements of AgWise? The key elements of AgWise is, first of all, it is demand mapping, and that is where we are assessing the target user need and capability. What is the current knowledge available and the knowledge gap, and what kind of solution will address their need in the right way, and also like the functionality of the tools to package the solution that we offer. How should that be designed to address our partners' need? We are working very intensely at this point in generating tailored fertilizer advice and optimal planting dates and cultivars. That's all about getting the low-risk cultivars, considering the spatial and temporal variation added to the climate variation as well. In tailored fertilizer advice, we try to produce it with the parameters that we get from our partners. It's not always the same, depending on their objective, depending on what data is available, considering all the agroecological parameters, and that we are delivering tailored fertilizer advice. The other focus that we have is a climate forecast, because we need to make our advisories climate smart. And for that one, we are looking into different climate forecast data sources. We are doing some sensitivity analysis and incorporating the best way we can the climate forecast, the weather forecast, and the climate forecast, the seasonal forecast data as well. So all of that, of course, will be the promise of our advisories will be realized only when there is a good agronomic practices in all other farm management areas. And for that one, we have a community of experts, agronomists, and market area specialists that are providing us in the ag inputs and in the other agronomic practices to provide a more general advice there. And at the end, we need to support our partners to integrate the advisories into their existing platform and their technical advice that they need the support in the training that is also provided. AgWise provide that to the partners as well. So if we just look at into the roadmap, it is another way of seeing at it with a little bit of more information. There is a conceptualization. So conceptualizing the solution part, where we are defining the tool functionality, where we are looking into existing knowledge and what is the gap and all that. Once we have all the knowledge there is, after defining the need for the advisory to the detail that we go into designing the advisory framework. That is where we are building our prediction models. We are developing prototype for interfaces. That is the analytics part. Once that is done, we move into the validation of the performance. At this point, it is really about the promise that the advisory made for increasing yield or increasing profit. Is it realized? Is it the performance, the accuracy of it? Together with our partners, it will be validated out on the field. But also the tool that we provide the advisory to, the interfaces, both the UX, the architecture, the friendliness of it, the fitting of if it is fits to the infrastructure and the capacity that is available there. When all this is validated and we are comfortable, we are going into piloting. At that point, it is about creating the training our partners, creating training and promotional materials, supporting the dissemination operation. And on the sixth step, the promote and the scale will come, and that is about expanding the partnership, bundling the advisory with other necessary information and resources. So this is like the roadmap in a very coarse way. And if I give you a taste of how the framework, the advisory framework is put in place, it is just one of the possibility to put our stepwise, the modular work. For instance, this is the work we did for Calvo here in Kenya to provide fertilizer advisory. So we start by getting the fertilizer response, yield response to fertilizer applications, right? The field data, the usual thing. And then we move into, from the observation that we have, estimating what is the nutrient supply of the soil, how much the soil can provide nutrient to the crop without any other additional resources. And then looking into what the farmers are currently doing, what they are using and how much yield they are getting. We try to find the management aspect, the contribution of management on the yield. So if we have on zero fertilizer, how much yield we have, how much the management is influencing. From the crop models, we could gauge how much the potential of the area is. So we could move to the yield gap analysis. And the next thing is, okay, now we have our models, but there are different types of fertilizers available for our partners. So we get for different fertilizer combinations, we start calculating our recommendations. We validate the recommendations based on the data we have. When that is ready, we provide, for instance, in this case, as maps and tables the recommendation, but it can also be provided as an API. So this is like the workflow. Using that for Kenya, this was the output that we give, considering the soil nutrient deficiencies, the fertilizer response under smallholder management, considering the seasonal weather, current fertilizer use, and the target of the partner. In this case, it was 20%, no, 30% yield increase that they wish. So we provide this kind of output. here, as you see it, it is aggregated at a district level, but we can also provide, in case of Rwanda, the objective was developing fertilizer recommendation at agroecology level. But when we do the analysis, we find out that actually the agroecology doesn't describe that, doesn't really, how do you say, there is still the within agroecology variation that is important enough that more tailoring would benefit the system. So we suggested that we provide what they asked, but on top of that, if the data guides us, we also advise our partners, and we developed not agroecology level plus for testing different fertilizer combinations based on the variations of yield response that we see. So we do that. So AKILIMO, my colleagues from here on will tell you what AKILIMO is. AKILIMO is much more than AgWise. AgWise is about the data analytics here, but AKILIMO comes in a much wider step. And currently we are strategizing AgWise being the engine of the AKILIMO, providing for priority crops, different fertilizers in different way of packaging. So for the AKILIMO, I will pass the stick to Thompson, I guess. Thompson, please go ahead. Thompson, do you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much, Meklit. Meklit has given a very brilliant summary of the analytics part of the work in terms of the processes involved to develop AKILIMO. And I want to dwell more to tell us about what AKILIMO is all about and what it does in terms of dissemination and all that. Basically, AKILIMO offers customized advice on how to grow cassava in your farm. And we have different formats that have been developed digitally, including IVR, USSD, and all that. And it also helps in terms of increase of cassava yield. Just like Meklit mentioned, you can get a 30% increment or more if the processes is followed as well. Not only that, it helps in terms of revenue generation for farmers to be able to increase their revenue, which is also one of the ultimate things that most farmers are looking into in terms of really helping them. But basically going forward from here, AKILIMO also, we have developed a lot of advisory tools and training materials that we are using. Right from, we have what we call printable guides. We have a cassava guide. We have AKILIMO app, which gives recommendation in 4 different areas. We have a fertilizer recommendation, best planting practices. We have scheduled planting and harvest. And the last one is about intercropping cassava with maize. But also, there are different assets that we have observed AKILIMO to have exhibited over time. Basically, 4 of them. And one of the major things is that it is partnership driven. And we leverage on dissemination platform of partners as we move. And this is happening through a sort of relationship we have built through partnership and to define relationships and roles in terms of who is doing what. But one of the things that make it unique is we also ensure that partners integrate the use of these AKILIMO digital tools into their operations and in order to be able to generate learnings required. Several processes were used in terms of the dissemination. Just like Meklit mentioned, is a demand-driven approach, whereby partners indicate what they really need to do and how AKILIMO can resolve that. So we have processes that we engage in terms of the dissemination, right from engagement with partners, getting their demand generated, up to the level that we got to a time that we discovered that there are a lot of obstacles and bottlenecks that will not allow us to be able to disseminate the use of AKILIMO successfully. And it was at that point we are seeing the need to actually involve secondary partners who could resolve these bottlenecks for us to be able to have sustainable solutions. But in every level that we were passing through, we have monitoring, evaluation, and learning, generating a lot of data for us to be able to ensure that those data will give us informed decisions as we move along the way with the partners that are involved generally. So, and as the dissemination approach continues, what we are disseminating majorly is a knowledge product, which is AKILIMO, which is our core innovation. And we leverage on a lot of grassroots events, and we have a lot of training materials, farmer-friendly videos, radio content, and so many other things that we are using. But we discovered that this was difficult to fly until we begin to see the need for complementary innovation. And the complementary innovation were so many of them, starting from the need for especially input and output market. And we have to engage many of these partners to look into credit facilitation, market access, aggregation, and to also have a sort of a hubs whereby they can be able to collate and work with the farmers successfully. But one of the tools we also use is one of the CGR tool that is developed, which we refer to as scaling readiness, which help us to also look into bundling of core innovation into complementary innovation, which we are having generally. And this was what made the dissemination approach process to be very seamless. And going forward with that, we analyzed most of the bottlenecks that were identified for true value chain analysis, and we were able to discover a lot of challenges across the value chain, which really helped us to identify all challenges across the value chain. Then we zero in into the most important ones, which are the key bottlenecks that can assist to be able to move forward in terms of what we need to do. And on the next slide, we have all these customized where we have the major bottlenecks for farmers as market access, credit access, and quality input. These were the major things we were able to discover. This goes alongside with price fluctuation, alongside with limited business relationship, high cost of production. And when all these were discovered by partners, we were able to identify partners who were seeing these bottlenecks as an opportunity for them to do business, and they were part of the dissemination process. And this helped us to be able to have a sort of a relationship mapping, which is on the next thing, in terms of making sure that we link those bottlenecks that we are having to which organization or partners can actually resolve them, and it will be of advantage to them. Then on the next slide, that one is showing, you can see the different bottlenecks at value chain level that we discovered until even access to fertilizer and all that. We were able to identify, engage secondary partners that will resolve some of this problem. And that is when we identify bottlenecks at value chain level and at project level. At project level, language barriers, we translated all our materials into local languages for easy access. We are able to ensure that the promotion materials are available. And we also look into the aspect of farmer extension ratio by introducing the use of lead farmers that assisted in terms of that. Then we customize some radio content to be able to make it easier for farmers to be able to listen via radio. And we came up with a strategy of how to reach to farmers who listen to some of the information on radio, and that worked effectively as part of the dissemination process. Yes, then the next thing was the need to look into the network analysis. And in terms of this, we were able to look at the existing primary partners we work with to link them to partners that are already building relationship with them. This assisted us to be able to identify existing secondary partners that are working with the initial primary partners that we identify with in Nigeria. Basically, they were so few when we started in Nigeria, but as a result of identifying more secondary partners that were working with these primary partners, these assisted us to be able to resolve most of the challenges that were discovered. And this led to a better relationship building between secondary partners and the primary partners, which is the next thing on the next slide. Now, this helps us to know that what linkages, breakages are we having along the value chain. So we're able to identify that across the value chain, and we identified the point of weakness, and we knew where some of the partners were having a sort of maybe a transactional relationship, and where some of them were having contractual agreement and all that. So those ones that they were having a sort of arm's-length relationship, we were able to know that they need to bridge that more, and this really assisted in the process. Also, value chain first services that are required were identified along the value chain. This assisted many of the partners that were identified, the secondary partners, to know who to render what service to. This really helped them to be able to build a relationship on financial services, financial inclusion, also gender mainstreaming, how to integrate youth into using some of these digital apps, because youth were much more attractive to be able to be part of that process as we were running in terms of the dissemination. So this assisted us to be able to bundle the use of the agronomy solution into value chain services. And it helps to reduce and resolve many of the challenges that we were having, as those partners were seeing those challenges as point of opportunity to render service and make money in the value chain. Now, gradually, I will be running up now. One of the major things that we also use that help us is the monetary evaluation and learning, as I indicated from the beginning, that at every point we were doing that. But we were not just gathering the data or users. We were actually checking a lot of things at every point. We want to know if they have gained insight in terms of the content of the agronomy solution that we have given to them. And if they have been able to have gained insight, then we are counting that they have been reached with the information through one of the events which I've indicated initially. But we will not stop there. We also continue to check, do they continue to be using the tool? We check that through our monetary evaluation process, and we go further to actually ensure that they are changing their practices. What they used to do that were not really in order has been changed, and we continue to use that through structured phone interview on monthly basis, picking on that. But the last aspect which we are also checking, which is very key, is to also do a sort of quantification to find out what is the benefit accrued to the farmers based on the fact that they are using these digital tools. We want to look at the exact generation of revenue they are getting after we have looked into the cost of their production to see what is the net profit that they're actually getting. And what we have discovered is that that has really improved, and also cost of production has been reduced. The adoption of the innovation is not increasing their cost of production, because there were other things they were doing before that they did not to do. And one of the things majorly is also the aspect of ensuring they have expected plant population for most of the cassava that they are cultivating per hectare. And these are numbers that we can also show. Currently, we have trained over 7,000 extension agents, and we have 38% of them who are female. And in Nigeria and Tanzania, we had over 400,000 farmers that have been reached through the use of these innovations and the different format that is involved. And 39% of those farmers are also female, while we also have currently active users, because we also follow up on that to look at who are the farmer we have reached who continue to be using the innovation. And we have 85% of them using that, while over 300,000 hectares have been impacted. And on the average, we've had 25% increase in terms of root yield. So I will, at this point, I will hand over to my colleague Samson, who is going to take it off from here, and they also initiated some idea from the private sector and the sustainability pathway that we built into the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Thompson.
All right.
Samson, maybe you start by introducing yourself and we go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Meklit. My name is Samson Oguntoye. I work for Notori Chemical Industries as the regional manager for agricultural extension services. And I am also the general secretary for the AKILIMO Nigeria Association. All right, so I'll just take it up very quickly from where Thompson stopped. Now, the monitoring evaluation activities on the AKILIMO project actually gave a lot of insights into the level of adoption and uptake of the AKILIMO advisories among farmers. And this also shed some bit of light into areas where there are low adoption and gave us insight into why we are having varied levels of adoption. And so we discovered that beyond just introducing a knowledge product, which basically is what we are bringing in form of the different formats of the AKILIMO advisory, we discovered that there are a number of other factors that could influence or directly affect how the farmers adopt or otherwise the use of those agronomic services that we're introducing through AKILIMO. And this actually led to a development of a whole lot of other ecosystem support partners to come into the chain in order to facilitate continued use and uptake of the AKILIMO advisories. Let me say, for example, if you have a situation where the tool is recommending that the farmer uses a certain amount of fertilizer to get an expected yield increase, and then you don't have a fertilizer retailer or wholesaler accessible to him, then it becomes a bottleneck that stops this farmer from being able to use that recommendation from the AKILIMO advisory. And so we started, like Thompson mentioned earlier, building a whole lot of networks of related service providers, especially in the input and output market sectors, sellers of fertilizers, herbicides, and improved cuttings, as well as output markets to which these farmers will expect to sell their products to at the end of their farming season. And we also had, for example, other service providers like credit providers, like insurance services also come into the chain. Now, this whole network helped to transform the level of adoption of the AKILIMO advisory and established clearly that beyond providing agronomic support, there is a need to also make sure that all of the other related value chain services are available to encourage the farmers to be able to adopt and readily take up the agronomic advisories that are being provided to them. Now, going to the next slide, you will see basically that we now have a system where the whole of the scaling process was mostly driven by partners who had come onto the network. So apart from the original primary partners who were like the demand partners at the beginning of the project, we actually had a whole lot more partners who joined the project as secondary partners because of one service or the other that they have to provide along the value chain for the farmers. And this helped us to be able to really move very fast in terms of dissemination. And we were able to have the project step back a bit to only take up roles of backstopping the different stages of the activities and leaving the farmers and the private sector partners and other service providers to really be in the driving seat of the activities. At some point also, like Thompson mentioned earlier, we had a lot of farmer-to-farmer diffusion because we introduced lead farmers when we discovered that there was a very high extension to farmer ratio, and this helped quickly propagate the AKILIMO message such that farmers were interacting with one another and learning more about the advisory instead of just waiting until there is an extension agent to do that with them. And then another factor which you can clearly see from all of the foregoing is that the partners were able to really drive the scaling process by building by integrating the AKILIMO advisory into their direct operations. As you see on the next slide, we'll take an example with Zoacell. For example, Zoacell is a marketplace providing organization who also offer digital services to farmers. Now, Zoacell came into the project and were able to provide a whole lot of network of potential buyers of cassava products from farmers. And then they also started setting up what we call crop test centers, where farmers can bring their harvest produce to, and then they are linked up to potential buyers who come to buy up their cassava roots. Now, in this process, Zoacell also facilitated an arrangement where they do credit scoring for farmers, and the farmers are able to access some form of credit, either either as direct cash or even as a form of input from Zoacell. And then they are able to use that in their production and then return their produce to Zoacell marketplace for sale, where they are linked up to potential off-takers and processors who buy up their products. Now, in this example, we can see that Zoacell becomes a kind of center where other ecosystem partners also interact. So Zoacell builds relationship, for example, with fertilizer and herbicide companies who supply products to them. Part of this are given to the farmers as some form of credit. Zoacell also establishes relationships with processor companies like starch companies, like Gary producing companies who buy up the cassava roots that are brought to the farmers, that are brought to the crop test centers by the farmers. So basically, AKILIMO has developed into a community of various partners who are interfacing on a day-to-day basis based on value provision, based on services that are being offered, and are interacting at a very high level, independent of the interference of the project or the domiciliary institution, which in this case was IITA. Now, on the next slide, you can actually see a summary of the partnership network that we have for AKILIMO across the 3 countries where activities are currently going. It's much advanced in Nigeria and Tanzania. Ghana is just coming up, and there's a whole lot also that is coming up in that space. But from the summary, you can see that we have quite over 150 partners in Nigeria and over 90 partners in Tanzania. And in Ghana, we currently have about 25 partners, and this list is growing by the day. Now, these partners also spread across a whole wide spectrum of different sectors. We have processor organizations, we have farmer associations, we have input companies, we have fertilizer companies, we have herbicide companies. We also have even involvement of government sector players like the research institutions, the government extension services, and a whole lot of other partners who are interacting across the different countries in the AKILIMO space. Now, this has also led to a very wide network of extension agents. We have upwards of 9,000 extension agents that have been trained, both within the private and public sectors, who are disseminating information on AKILIMO usage across the countries. And then we observed that in previous projects across the CG centers, you find a situation where at the expiration of the projects, you find basically a downward trend or a decline in the use of the output of the project. And in some cases, you actually find almost extinction in terms of use of whatever agronomic products that have been developed by this project. Now, in a bid to avoid this kind of situation, we have tried to chart a course of sustainability for AKILIMO and its products, the product of that project. And this has led us to the development of the AKILIMO Partner Association across the 3 countries. Today, we have in concept AKILIMO Nigeria Association, ANA, AKILIMO Tanzania Association, ATA, and of course, coming up very soon, also AKILIMO Ghana Association. Now, these associations were basically developed as part of a sustainability drive for AKILIMO objectives, for AKILIMO advisory products. And part of the objectives, as you see on the next slide, is basically to help ensure that the output from the AKILIMO project are sustained and used in a way that they are available for a long term. Now, part of the objectives of the association will be to maintain all of the interfaces and training materials to make sure that they are available in a relevant and up-to-date manner for farmers to be able to use them. We also want to continue growing the user base of the AKILIMO data and make sure that we collect relevant information about farmers who are using, the kind of insights they are gaining, and how many of them are changing their practices and making increases in revenue as a result of the use of AKILIMO. Of course, we also want to continue to ensure that we develop cost-efficient strategies for AKILIMO training and support amongst farmers and farmer organizations. And we also want to make sure that beyond a direct use by farmers, if there are other organizations like those ones whom we have identified as providing support services that are relevant to the value chain in terms of AKILIMO use, we want to make sure that we can make API available for them to integrate AKILIMO into their operations so that we can expand AKILIMO use also beyond the cassava that is being used for today into other crops like maize and rice as being currently developed. And of course, we also want to continue use and uptake monitoring to make sure that we can have continued data available, use this data to generate useful insights for farmers, for producer companies, and other partners in the value chain, and also to implement feedback mechanisms that will help us to do continuous improvement. And as part of this, we have come up with a concept of an AKILIMO global platform that has 3 teams that are basically set up to support the functioning of the AKILIMO platforms across these 3 countries. And these 3 teams will be working in sync across all of the 3 countries to ensure that we have up-to-date content and translation into the relevant local languages. And then we have the business team to also work on developing business models for marketing and promotion of AKILIMO, and then to ensure that beyond the support from the project and the CG centers, the AKILIMO associations in country are able to generate revenue that will help to sustain the activities of the organization. And then lastly, we want to have a tech team that will be focused on ensuring that there is a continued functionality of the AKILIMO platform. They would set up systems that will monitor data that is collected, analyze this data to generate insights for the private organizations within the AKILIMO network across the countries to be able to push them to increase their profitability and revenue. And then we also want to set up mechanisms for price data collection, for yield data collection, and all of those other relevant information that will help us to be able to increase the productivity of AKILIMO. And then lastly, I will hand over to Thompson to talk around the key learnings and challenges that we have faced on the AKILIMO journey today.
Yeah,
so
thank you very much, Samson. Generally, there are a lot of learnings, but these are key ones that we have observed that, especially in terms of ownership and long-term sustainability, we have seen the need to involve partners from the beginning and to consider local context in terms of building digital tools so that the usability will be there. That was one of the key lessons. And also having it in mind that there is difference between partners and the end users. A lot of organizations were working as partners, while the real users are the farmers. So if we don't tailor the development of the tool for the partners to channel it to the end users and ensure we get their buy-in into development process, the usage will be affected. And as has been shown before now also, in terms of the bottlenecks, we might not be able to resolve all bottlenecks, but we have a lot of partners who we see bottlenecks as opportunity for business. And as a result of that, they can be engaged in the whole process. And one of the key learning also that we have generated is the mail system that we have put in place, whereby we are able to track all the users to their name, to their location, and we are able to know the level of usage and some of the challenges they are facing, which has helped us to be able to recustomize some of the tools and to also get feedback. For example, when we were getting lower representation of female usage, we were able to use the data we have generated to discover what the challenges could be. And that really assisted to have gotten almost 40% of women be mobilized to be using the tool. Then capacity of partners to also use this and integrate into the network of their farmers is important, so that capacity building for partners should not just come up without identifying something concrete that they can take it into in terms of their operations and which will be there permanently. And the last aspect basically is the complementary innovation with core innovations, the need for credit, output and input market, crop insurance. All these complementary innovations goes a long way to allow the core innovation of agronomy solution to be able to fly. But despite all this, there were challenges, numerous, that we were able to also pass through in the whole process. The whole process is a multi-stakeholder process and is very cumbersome. And you could relate with a lot of actors in the field, and maybe a more decision maker will override on that. Then you start the process afresh. And also, trust building process takes a lot of time and investment, but it's worth it to actually build trust, especially with the end users, the small older farmers. The need to also, the alignment of the need of partners into project need is also very important, and one of the things we have noted also. And in the process of customization of the tools for use, we put into consideration the specific use and need of the partners. And lastly, which I've also mentioned as part of our feedback, is a local conceptualization issue to make sure that we address contextual factors, consider the environment and culture generally. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Samson and Thompson. Maybe we open, we are open now for feedback questions. Maybe in the chat, is there a message there?
Yeah, there's one message. Great content and superb presentation. It's a wonderful job, you all.
Thank you.
I don't see any questions in the chat. Audience, if you want to ask a question under Q&A or under chat, please do so now. We'll give it a minute, and if not, then I think we can conclude. Could you talk a bit about your model for working with extension workers? And Meklit, I want to make sure, can you see that? Can you see the webinar chat? Very bottom, there should be a button that says chat.
Yes.
Normally there has to be, but I am not finding it.
Thompson,
Yes,
do you see it?
Yes, I've seen it, and I can quickly address that.
Okay.
The model really is working. It's working with the partners, as I've mentioned. We have the government extension system, and we have the private sector-driven extension system. So we work with both. A typical example I can give for Nigeria is Ogun State Extension Program, which is called OGADEP. They have officially adopted the use of AKILIMO as part of their extension package. So the model is to train the government extension agents to pick up the use of AKILIMO as part of their extension product. But for the private sector, it's a little bit a different thing. We work with several, like Notore, they have their extension agent that are referred to as village promoters. Sotri International Limited, they have it also in Nigeria. And also when we go to Tanzania, we have a lot of the partners that are having private extension that they are working with. So we train them, and they try to now customize the use of extension as part of package for input and market. So as a result of that, when the extension, the knowledge they have received, they follow up with the farmers to their field to back up with them on terms of the knowledge so that they can increase their productivity, because that when productivity is increased, it gives opportunity for price competitiveness for the private sector. And that becomes an opportunity. I don't know if Samson can give specific more example in terms of the model they are using with AKILIMO in Notore.
Oh, yes. So thank you very much, Doc. Yeah, so for Notori, for example, part of what we do is to have a system where the farmers are reached through demonstration fields that we call
Looks like there might have been a power outage too.
demo plots in Nigeria. Now, these are set up by our local, these are basically sitting within the local communities and who set up small farms where they bring the farmers together and they apply the learnings from the AKILIMO advisory. And then the extension agent also doubles as a contact point where these farmers can source their fertilizers. So as they get recommendations from the AKILIMO app on the kind of fertilizers to use and the timing, they are able to also get these fertilizers from within their local community and use. So that is a typical example of how this works with the private extension. For government extension, like he mentioned, we have the different government extension arms, both at the federal and state levels, being trained on the use of AKILIMO. As we speak today in Nigeria, the National Agricultural Extension Research and License Services, NRLS, which is the body that has mandate for extension services within the country, is also attuned with AKILIMO and has AKILIMO content as part of their package. They also have a helpline service where farmers can call in to ask questions and be given recommendation and advice on best practices as directed by AKILIMO. I hope this does answer the question to Annette.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Samson. Over to you, Meklit. I don't know if there are other questions before we close.
There is one more that an excellent presentation. How did coin AKILIMO?
Okay. So Meklit, can you attend to that?
Victor, maybe can you explain a bit more? I'm not getting the question correctly.
Yeah. I think the question is about how do we come about the word AKILIMO?
Oh, okay,
yes.
that one, yes. Yeah. So it is a concatenation of two words, Akili and Kilimo, Swahili word. Akili is smart or wise, and Kilimo is agriculture. So together, AKILIMO gives a smart agriculture.
Yes, thank you very much. So I don't know if there's any other question. Yes, I think that's good. I think the person who asked the question is from Kenya, and it's already saying that is wonderful. Yeah, thank you very much, Victor. Yeah. Okay.
If there is any more question, otherwise, I think with this we will. How do you work on the technology fine-tuning part? Maybe if I can give it a shot.
Yes,
if it is the technology in terms of data analytics that defines the data that is available and what the demand partner needs, at what level of tailoring that they require the advisory, because you can work at a very generalized level, province, county level, increasing to the certain target yield and stuff like that. But otherwise, if they want to account for price fluctuation, tailoring to their farm size, for the type of fertilizer they have, how much they can invest, what kind of risk they want to take, all that will then immediately reflect analytically. It is one thing, but it reflects in the technology that they require to package it as well. They need to have the infrastructure, network accessibility, smartphone availability, and so on. So depending on that, the technology in what we package, how we package the advisory could be printable maps and tables, but it can go to the tailoring level of mobile application and API based. I think, I don't know if that answers for the training. For instance, there are cartoon guides, there are farmers friendly videos, radio programs, flyers, postcards. So all this kind of technology, depending on who the partner is and on who the end user is, what the channel in between, the extension agent's capability and infrastructure, all that defines, and we try to diversify there. I hope that answers the question, but there is another one. Do you partner with tech companies or in-house? That is also related. So it is a combination of it at this point. For instance, the farmers-friendly video, we involve tech companies to develop those videos for us. But if you take the mobile application, the API that we develop ourselves as a part of the data analytics framework, that is for AKILIMO. When you come to AgWise, the whole cassava work that we have in AKILIMO is going to be done for several crops and several countries. At this point, we are offering a standard package, like if you can make use of API, we will build the API in-house. If you want to work with printable materials, that also we will offer. But if a partner needs to develop a mobile application, we ask them to come with a third party or their own in-house capability, and we provide all the support that we can. So it is really a combination of the two. I hope that answers the question.